Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. The Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. Super excited to have everybody. Aaron, why don't we jump in with you?
Aaron Judy, Chief of Innovation and Emerging Technologies with Maricopa County. Maricopa County is a federation of 55 plus different agencies, so I'm trying to make amazing things for everyone, including the constituents. My division is responsible for innovation. That includes AI and data services, applications development, both commercial off-the-shelf and homegrown, business services, and GIS.
Whew, love that. Steven?
Steven Hintze. I'm the Chief Data and Product Officer at Arizona Department of Child Safety. Me, I'm just a guy. I'm a third-generation Arizonan, and I work for a state that I care about a lot. And over our comprehensive child welfare information system, which is what our case managers use all day, every day, and all of our data products as well. So just a blast every day being here.
Love it. Steven, just a guy. I'm going to put that in quotes. Steven.
Just a guy. That's it.
Just a guy. Chief Data and Product Officer. Kyle?
I don't know if I'm cool enough to be just a guy, but Kyle Patel here. I lead product and engineering for a startup called Polimorphic. We're really focused on what we call the government customer service experience and using a lot of AI tools to solve for that. My background has been mostly in the AI research world. Started my career at NASA, then Google, doing a lot of what really turned into agentic AI research. We didn't call it that back then, but really what kind of led to that, and then what turned into like early transformer model research, and ultimately the infrastructure and technology that like the large language models today are built on top of, but really got passionate about applying those tools to the public sector. So that's what we're doing now.
Love that. We're going to jump right into it. Aaron, so you've structured, so on our first episode, rolling back to episode 112, it's been a while, you told me you structured your team when you were at the Maricopa County Superior Court. The innovation team is Q branch. I love that. I actually didn't know, and I didn't ask you if it's still the same name, but I'd love for you to just walk us through, even if you don't have it at Maricopa County, how you just walk us through the team structure, the emerging tech, and how really Rich has enabled you to not get bogged down in the operations, but to really just focus on driving innovation for Maricopa County.
Certainly. So it is still, I still think of the innovation team as Q branch. We make if you can't be Bond, be Q. It's making all the cool things that everybody else uses. I call my engineers my Imagineers, but HR said I couldn't do that. So I guess I'll just call them my engineers. I have a small team on my innovation team, and they really focus on making a foothold, understanding the art of the possible, right? We fail fast, we learn, we try again. It's not, you get one shot at this project, and if it doesn't make it, we're done and we're just a wash. We really follow emerging technologies. We get some directives as requests, we'd like you to do these things, and then others we generate ourselves. Here's a cool technology, we think it has a use case, and we go out to business engagement managers. We participate in various meetings, even if they're not ours, sometimes just to understand how we can add value or how what we do could create opportunities. We pair technologists with business experts so that I don't necessarily always know what you do or how you do it, but you do, and together we'll make a great team. We write code we may never use, and that happens a lot. We build prototypes, and sometimes they just get tossed in a bin. We save the code, but we really empower that small team to act, right? And sometimes it's just one of my solution engineers that's working on an entire implementation of some kind of technology. Each one focuses on their specific skill sets. We don't impose alien technology on traditional teams. So if I have a brand new AI technology, I don't just give that to server system admins who have never seen it before, right? Some of those things I have to operationalize until we find it a good home. We build a portfolio of capabilities so that, like I said, we write code, so we'll save those parts. And someday we can pull that out and say, hey, we did this before and I've got it here. I can reuse this paradigm. But it really helps us to understand what we can and can't do. I know exactly what the team is capable of, what we've done in the past, even how fast we can move given Hofstadter's law. Rich, other than being an amazing golfer, see, you can tell him I said that, he's really about bold and calculated commitment to innovation, right? He helps keep the team pure. As I always joke, he keeps the flies off of us. but he doesn't get the innovation team weighed down in operations. He gives us room to fail, right? Sometimes folks don't have the stomach for innovation. And it's really about letting us fail while we're iterating through new technologies.
Yeah, love that. Steven, you mentioned having, I think it was like 30 years worth of data across like legislation. And yesterday I was at this roundtable in Santa Barbara County, and it was a very similar process of one of the CIOs had said that they've got 20 years worth of county council meeting data, which I immediately had thought about you, which is pretty funny because I'm like, oh, I got this podcast tomorrow. How are you using AI to create governance or even just access all of this unstructured data?
I'm super interested in what y'all have feedback-wise on this, right? So if y'all think I'm an idiot, just tell me now so I can change my strategy a little bit. When I talk to people about AI and governance, there are some approaches that I hear about you got to take your unstructured data and figure out how to structure it, right? An event happened on this day, so try to pull the date out of it. A name happened there, try to pull the name out of it. I get it. That makes sense because that follows some traditional models of governance. Like you're governing the structured data, you're trying to make sure that everything is accurate there. I'm not sold on it though for AI and how we're going to actually use this, because the whole benefit of AI is understanding that contextual language. And if you try to take all of the context out to structure it, because our brains like things to be clean, then you're not really going to get to the space where the value is, because humans don't talk cleanly. And for us, like that 30 years of data is social work, right? Like I was a case manager back in 2010, working with families on reunification, right? All of the information I knew was typed into notes in one big old box in a screen on a system built in the 90s. We have all that. And I want to be able to use it not by structuring it all. I want to give more context with like a crazy RAG model that enables us to write down, here's the events that happened that changed legislation in 1997 versus like 2008, and take that information and ping that unstructured data to give me some context to then extract some insights over the 30 years, right? Those are just 2 data points, but our organization has been through massive change. And Aaron, you know this in government. Government loves a policy. They love to write information about the policy. They love to write guides about the policy. They love to put documents about the guides, about the policy on SharePoint sites. Like all this stuff is there. Let's use it. We're really good at creating high quality unstructured data. Let's use that to our advantage and then ping our unstructured data and create those insights. So that's what I think with this AI governance strategy is you got to create that highly curated content that is unstructured to then ping it back. But I don't know, y'all think I'm an idiot on this? Or what are your thoughts?
Only on the SharePoint part, because I think you need to really get that up. That's what we call an alley-oop. You threw that up there. I'm sorry. Go for it, Kyle.
No, yeah, I think I love hearing us throw around the technical terms, get some RAG models in there. But no, I think that's exactly right. And like when we think about what we do at Polimorphic, a lot of it is that, right? Like the beauty of AI is that it can churn through copious amounts of unstructured data. And sometimes it'll do its own indexing under the hood that we don't even, in a lot of cases, honestly, especially with these big new transformer models, like they're not really even intelligible to people, but the machines know how to index it and retrieve it. And that's ultimately what matters to make it useful. So I think, Steven, you're right on the right track, at least in my humble opinion.
Oh, Kyle can still be my friend. Aaron?
I would actually add a layer of complexity to that. Like usually RAGs always give me the very best answer the first time. And that typically falls short, at least in my experience. So I would add an agentic layer on top of that and make that RAG agent under there and say, give me 3 to 5 RAG polls and then generate the answer on those results. But other than that, RAG and AI, that's Pete's Red Hot. I put that stuff on everything.
Real quick, we got to plug this. Show us the coffee mug, Kyle. You got to show us this coffee mug. Don't let that get in forgot. Oh yeah, Google Duplex.
Best software of 2018. Turning back the hands of time here a little bit.
2018. I think I was in diapers in 2018. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, man.
So I love this. I actually remember this in 2018, Kyle, where you had the agents with the haircut appointments. Now governments are still the whole like press 1, press 2 system. There are still some governments where it's, for me as a business owner, it's a pain to make payments online. It just doesn't exist. You got to go to a physical office. What's like the biggest mind shift set that you've seen translating from the cutting edge agentic AI capabilities to the government service delivery today?
Yeah, I think the press one, press two, that's the IVR system as we call it, an interactive voice response system, which sounds nice and fancy, but we've all used it. It's not so great. And I think it's like particularly good example of why it's especially bad for the public sector. We've all encountered those systems, but in the public sector, it's really hard. You're the front desk for a county. It's press one for Parks and Rec, press two for Public Works, press three for the Buildings Department, press four, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's press nine for even more options, right? And why that really fails is, one, most residents have no idea what department they're trying to contact, right? They're like, hey, a tree fell in my yard. I don't know who deals with that. Is that the Parks Department? Is that a Public Works issue? Blah, blah, blah. And so it's really tough from that perspective. And then the second part of it is, I think those systems were sold to government as saying, hey, look at this awesome piece of automation. And it's not really automation. You're pushing the burden of the work elsewhere. That's really what you're doing there. You're saying, hey, user, we're going to become operationally efficient and tell you to go do it, right? And it's like the same thing you would see if you're use the self-checkout lane at the grocery store, right? It's the same thing where it's like, hey, we're operationally efficient by making you check yourself out. But you haven't really improved the user experience or actually made it anything better. If anything, for the most part, you've probably made it worse, right? And so I think that's part of the mindset shift of why this new AI thing is different from saying, hey, there was this whole like bucket of things we called automation for a long time that weren't really automation. They were like shifting labor elsewhere, where now today you actually have the ability to do a lot of those agentic things. And Aaron was suggesting multi-shot RAG is really good. And it's a really good way of saying, hey, Aaron, just tell me your problem. Oh, a tree fell in your yard. I think this is a department you should be contacting. I can answer some questions for you. If I can't answer them or you think you need more help, I'll just transfer you over to them. And it's like a totally different way of thinking about what automation can do. And I think the build on top of that is, how do you make all of that really easy to use for really broad domains of knowledge, right? Because again, thinking about if you're the front desk for a county, you can't say, like a private sector might be really good at like selling one kind of good, right? And like it's a sporting goods store and they know inventory. Maybe you can even procure stuff with their agent or whatever it is. But if you're the front desk for a county, like you need to know the rules of something about Medicaid applications and also like how to reserve a grill in a public park, like things that have just nothing to do with each other, especially when you think about the kinds of data you're talking about and the actions that would follow onto them. And so it's really about how do you do automation really well in a true automation sense, and then say, hey, look, we can actually understand this broad context of information now, as opposed to those traditional systems that was just like, try to name the department you want to talk to, and that like voice maybe 1 out of 10 times actually hears you correctly. So I think we've just come a long way on the tech side. And that mindset shift we're just really trying to get across is that the tech has changed. And like, I know people have been trying to sell you these products for a long time, but the products that came before are really just fundamentally not the product that's coming out now.
Yeah, no, that's a really good insight. And I think about this, I mean, probably like everyone, if you think about like the user experience and the services that you consume, right? Like I consume services as a consumer and as a business owner. And like an easy example is I want to know like when trash day is, right? But to navigate a website is very difficult. And Aaron, I've talked to Rich about this too, where what is really the purpose? Most governments, probably 100% of them, aren't running ads. They're not really selling products. I want to consume the information as fast as possible. And so I want to like, brings up that question of what's the purpose of a website? That's the first one. And then even for me, it's I just want to know, I want to be in and out. I want to know on this holiday, is the trash coming or not, right? I need to tell my wife trash is yes or no. So I think there's like a cajillion use cases, but this is as a user experience. I'm constantly thinking about this, which is great segue to the next section of just real world implementation and user experience. Aaron, I think you had mentioned, we had you on my private community, the Collaboratory, earlier this year. I think you had mentioned you had 100 AI use cases identified, I think across some of the innovation days. You had mentioned the 55 departments. Could you tell us maybe one use case that completely surprised you, either because it worked better than you thought or just wasn't the right fit at all, almost like a founder's dilemma situation where you had to close it down?
Yeah, I've probably had a lot of the times where people expect AI to do great things and it doesn't. But you've heard all the horror stories, particularly recently, of vibe coding going wrong, right? People keep messing that up. But when an experienced developer uses the same tools, you can make hits all day. We were making a delivery of another AI application. That was actually breed recognition for mixed breed animals for animal care, which is hard. It's hard for a human just to eyeball, what is this mutt, for lack of a better term? What kind of animal is that? So while we're going over, here's how you work it and so forth, coincidentally, the director said, you know what I really need, Aaron, is a means of contact tracing for animals. And that means like if an animal becomes sick, how would they know the animals in the adjacent kennels, what their risk was, if they were in close proximity and so forth. Within 10 minutes, we had a working prototype for an application to trace animals that had been in contact with that animal for how long, their level of risk, with timeline, relationship mapping, forward and backward in time, back to patient zero. It was amazing. And it impressed the customer so much, right? These agencies are my customers. So they were just like, oh, wow, you guys can work miracles. I'm like, no, I just prompt pretty good. That's all. But since then, we've moved it to production. We've done a series of vibe code and we put it through its paces. And now we're using multiple pieces of AI and algorithms to do this for them. So pretty proud of them.
So yesterday at the roundtable, anyone who's in local government, we had some higher ed folks there, but for local government, whether it was a city or a county CIO, the most surprising, it was insane. The most surprising number of hits that they get is related to pets on the website. Yeah. I was like, what? I would have never thought that. That's crazy. Tells you what is
elections. Everybody knows Maricopa County for what? Yeah, elections. But behind that is pets. That's number 2.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So Kyle, I just want to roll it back. So you've seen both Google's AI has been around for a while. Where are most vendor partners missing with their AI pitches today? How are you seeing the landscape?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to hit your head against the wall a million times and fail and realize why it's failing to figure out. Like our CEO and I have done this thing where we'll just rent a car, drive across a state and just talk to a bunch of people and stop at every county office you can and just see what's going on, see what's vibing with people, what's not. And I think what we've seen is a lot of folks feel like the tech sector, I think this is just broadly true, has let down local government in particular, generally speaking, right? A lot of the systems have been like bespoke systems that really weren't quite right even on day one and just decayed from there. And it just got worse over time. And 5 years later, you're left with a system that does 50% of what it was supposed to do. And maybe the policies and rules have changed and the system hasn't kept up to date. Right? That's super common. And then I think the second part of it is really how the private sector thinks about capturing value. And to put it in like tech terms, like the way I think about it now is government is the ultimate platform layer for everything. Right? That's a platform layer of society. Right? That enables you to get in your car to go to work every day. That lets you have that business exist. It lets you get an education, have access to healthcare, all these things. But what's really strange about government, I think, particularly to the tech industry, is government is there to create value, but not capture that value. Right? So for a private sector business, it's really easy to sell them something because I can say, hey, Joe, like your podcast, you're going to want to use this podcasting platform because it's going to make your podcast better and you're going to maybe make more money or whatever, you get more attention. And so it makes sense why you'd want to buy that thing. But government isn't internalizing the value that they're creating. And so I think from like a pricing perspective and then communicating value perspective, a lot of tech companies, I think historically have been more focused on what I would call extracting value from government as opposed to creating value for government. And I think that's the big differentiator, right? And so AI is obviously the big new thing, and there's a whole new way and new verticals in which you can create value, but ultimately it's about actually creating value and not extracting value. And then in particular on the buzzwordiness of it all, AI is really just how something works, right? And to be frank, most people don't really care how it works. They just want to know that it's going to work and it's going to create value, right? For Aaron's like model where he's trying to categorize or classify dog breeds or something like that, or like looking under the hood to the end customers is really not that interesting to them, but they're just excited that it's working. And I think ultimately that's what the vendors really need to think about. It's almost like take it way back. We're going back to business 101, solve somebody's problem and just provide them value. And in the government world, that means a lot of how do you find good use cases, write case studies around that, and then make sure those are shared and widely available. But really, it is just about get back to fundamentals and, hey, we're going to create value with you. And sure, if we create enough value for you, like we should receive some monetary compensation for that. But that's an agreed upon thing. And I think everybody can get behind that. But yeah, I think that's really where it's just really fractured, disconnected right now.
Yeah. One of the, I don't own a stake in Polimorphic at all, but one of the, I think I heard this on a podcast with the founder and CEO Parth, but I really like, if you read anything from Paul Graham out of Silicon Valley, I think there's, and Stephen and I might have talked about this too. One of the things I like is I like Silicon Valley in the sense that there's a very like optimistic piece combined with, hey, what problem are we trying to solve? Like really trying to solve. And there's just so many countless stories of whether it's Airbnb, right? You just take the founders and they're trying to find product market fit. But usually it involves something crazy, right? And then you just mentioned it, Kyle, like you mentioned getting in a car and driving. I think you said you were vibing in that car too, which is funny. That's like the OG vibing, right? And that's exactly how I think more folks should do it. Even the larger companies, the Amazons, all of that, having the time to really spend with the end customer, I think it's really powerful. Steven, I love this, just the transparency. We got to meet after we were at Infotech Live in Vegas. And when we were talking and catching up, you were talking about how critical you are vendors to just focus on the summarization features when the frontline workers need tools to help them expand their thinking. I absolutely loved that. It's like, right now, no shot on Google, but you open up Google and it's like, would you like me to summarize this email? And it's one sentence. I'm like, I don't need you to summarize anything. So I love this, but paint us a picture of what an AI tool that actually serves caseworkers should look like in practice. What would you love to see?
So for the things that we do, they're highly complex, right? It's human interaction and it's repeated human interaction over and over again. So you have case managers talking with parents, you have case managers talking with kids, right? They're there for those meetings. They don't need an AI to summarize what they did. Like, they were in the conversations. What they need is some tool that's going to help them expand those conversations, get beyond what is ever like going on between those folks in discussion. And I think about that case manager that's out there right now, right? It's Thursday, it's 4 o'clock. They've had a rough week already, and they just had an interaction with somebody and like, God, yeah, I really wish that could have gone better. I want to talk to somebody about how it could go better. But no one else was there. No one else has the history with this person. No one else knows what our dialogue has been like. I could talk to my supervisor, but they got a line out the door, and they probably don't have 3 hours for me to decompress all this. Who does is this AI thing that is patient as all hell and is available, right? So that's something that I see as a very good thing for case manager to have, to say, look, I'm struggling with how I'm trying to get this family through to the next major breakthrough. Can you help me out based off our interactions? Tell me where I could do better in this. What works for them that I'm not bringing to the table? Or what things am I bringing that I need to do more of? Because they do some great things and they might miss it. But these tools are there to help capture that interaction and to give new ideas to case management, like the hyper-personalization of service that's possible is amazing. That's the stuff that they need. Like, they don't need something that's going to summarize it down to be like, oh, Kyle has a mug. Talk about his mug. No shade, man. I love the mug. I have a Pixel device. There's my man. But yeah, they need something to help expand the relationship with people.
Okay, so I love that. I think the stat I read, I think it's like therapy is like number one on AI use cases, like broadly. I actually really like this because it's probably something I already do, and I think caseworkers do too. It's like me creating a project in Claude, right, on a very tiny scale. I think it's great for like all kinds of things, like bottleneck analysis that the caseworker could run, or even just the emotional weight that person is carrying. I think it's really good. And I want to jump back to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How are you thinking about what Steven just said?
I like the human justification. I probably can't talk about the specifics of it, but in some of the cases, some of the critical, heart-wrenching cases, we're finding that individuals are asking AI to validate their decisions. And in most cases, the AI is agreeing that based on these circumstances, you did the right thing. And for a lot of folks, that is comforting, right? To be validated, to have that weight taken off of you. That's a very human thing. And it's amazing that AI can give that to you.
Yeah, the decision-making impacts are always just so fascinating to me in this AI world, right? And like, I think about that in relation to the service that we're providing to people, of how do we give people something that helps inform their decision where they don't become reliant on the machine to make it, right? And I do think it's something that we've probably all learned. I assume you all are experts at navigating Google as much as I am. Like, you search the stuff, you know what sites you can trust, you know what sites you can't, like, and you've built that discernment over time. And I do think it's a pretty big fear right now that people aren't building that discernment. But I don't necessarily buy into that hype cycle. Like, I think our people are skeptical of the machine telling them what to do. And I do think they are more critically thinking, and is something that can help people not just follow it blindly, but use it in contexts like this for sensitive topics, like your point, Aaron. Like, you don't want them blindly trusting it, but you do want some other ideas out there. Making difficult decisions by yourself, that sucks. Making it with some other input and some other perspectives that help you hone that's the goal of this stuff.
You hear about, there was somebody in the news, I think the gentleman's name was Irwin, had a faster than light theory that he went to GPT, and GPT inflated his ego, told him he was right, told him that, and really fed into his delusions so much so that the guy ended up getting hospitalized. It was not a good thing. So there's a danger there. But for our use case, so this had happened, this is what I did. Be critical and tell me if I could have done this better.
Those are hard conversations for people to have with other humans, but a no judgment thing. That's why, Joe, to your point, why therapy is like skyrocketing as a use case. Someone's going to listen without judgment.
Yeah.
I will ask it.
Chat.
I will ask it. So I've got Claude, I got ChatGPT. ChatGPT's memory is great because I can ask it just like business questions, and I can just ask it like, "Hey, be brutally honest," and it will be brutally honest. Because I think most people will. A little tangent, but most people will never tell you the honest truth of what they think about a product, a service. This actually goes really well with the mom test. People just lie to you all the time, and to get really at the truth of what you're looking for, that kind of brutal honesty, it's just hard to really get that from customers, clients, whatever you want to call it, your alpha group. Yeah, it can be tough. Kyle, jumping back to you on just thinking about the citizen experience, how is Polimorphic separating from we got the chatbot that nobody uses, that was like really maybe not even machine learning. Like it was like we just uploaded some stuff and maybe it spits out something, to where we are today's almost the end of July 2025. Where are we at today on this?
I mean, I think that's a great way of framing it, is how far have we come? I think like you can think about the chatbot experience going back to, I think Microsoft debuted Clippy in 1995, right? Maybe that was like the first like really wide-based, I don't know, agent, or aspirational agent, maybe is the right way of saying it. But thing that was out there that was like, hey, like this is going to help you co-pilot through whatever day-to-day problems you have. And Clippy was cute, but not very effective. But I feel like everybody still has a soft spot for him. But really, it's like between then and where we are today, you move from that into probably like the 2010s, where you started getting into some more interesting machine learning kind of stuff. Maybe you're using neural nets, things like that. But again, it's the ability to take truly natural language and break it down and semantically understand it, like conceptually get to the root of what are people trying to say and get at. That really just hasn't existed until the last 3 or 4 years, where these large language models are particularly good at doing that, right? It goes into some of the architecture and how they actually apply attention and relative wording, actually changing the meaning of words and stuff like that, because language is pretty complicated. And I do think that is like a true game changer for what the technology can do. And so I think the chatbot that nobody uses, I think now we have the chatbot that some people use. But I think the real game changer is when at Polimorphic, we've thought about it as how do we build a core AI engine, right? Going back to maybe some more technical stuff like vector search, RAG models, and things like that. Like the way we think about it is, how do we build an ontology and knowledge graph that represents everything that organization knows? And then to extend it is, what is the actual knowledge graph of other organizations similar to it? So where are there actually holes in that knowledge graph? Because I think a lot of the AI challenges come from the AI can answer reasonably well when it knows, but the AI is actually not so good at identifying itself when it doesn't know. And that's when you get into the hallucinations. That's when you get into the weird one-word summaries that maybe aren't very helpful. And so that's like an interesting piece. So we've built that core engine that can actually know what it knows and know what it doesn't know. And then I think the real value driver is then you apply it to the phone, right? The phone is the place where it doesn't matter if you're 16 or 75. It doesn't matter if you're web first or whatever. Everybody's going to call in over the phone. And so I think being able to apply all those tools over the phone, incredibly valuable. And then being able to do it multilingual over the phone just extends the value to like a whole new extreme, right? Sometimes you can even get a better experience if you're a non-native English speaker on the phone now by talking to an AI than you might actually get from walking in. And so I think that's kind of like from like the macro AI perspective. Like I think driving a lot of stuff over voice AI is just like a true game changer for this space and just like changes how all this works. And then really it's going to do a lot of the stuff that ideally staff doesn't want to do. So it's like a lot of the calls that come in are like staff answering the same question 50 times, 100 times a day. And so it's doing a lot of the dirty work or the boring work, like the chores, so to speak, of what the staff does, and letting them do like the more human-centric, high-touch kind of work.
Stephen, Rob Fitzpatrick, the author of The Mom Test, says, and the full title is How to Talk to Customers and Learn If Your Business is a Good Idea When Everyone is Lying. So actually, I really like that title, because whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, we all have customers. And so we're trying to figure out, I'm thinking about you right now, Stephen, a caseworker might be well-intentioned, but might be explaining the problem in a way that maybe doesn't make sense and you're trying to solve the wrong problem. So how, I'm curious, especially with you, Stephen, how do you dive in and understand like what a caseworker is trying to tell you on a deeper level so that you can create those products and services that actually improve the outcomes for those families?
Yeah, a lot of it is an insane amount of curiosity and an initial assumption that the thing the person's asking for, it may not meet the need, right? Because most people like to come up with a solution to their problem. So they'll say, hey, I need this because it's going to solve that. Prime example, someone asked one of my folks, like, hey, can you rearrange a screen on this? Because I need to be able to see it all in one place. I got to click in 4 different things. That was the ask, right? Now, obviously, y'all have some questions, right? Like, why are we rearranging the stupid screen? So people were logging into this system. At the same time, they pull up a PDF on a different screen. So they log in and they take stuff off of the screen. They type it in this PDF that we gave them. And then they go to another screen, they type in another PDF. And they go into another screen, they type in another PDF. This is a PDF that we gave them. They're logging into our system, writing it in the PDF, uploading it into our system. They were trying to solve this problem of how do I get stuff from your system back into your system in the exact way that you want. It's insane. It makes no sense. But that was the ask to them because that would solve their problem. It's less clicks for them. So for us, like I luckily have an amazing team of business analysts under me that Ricky Denwood supervises. And this team are great at being empathetic and also asking questions in a way that doesn't come off like I'm questioning that you know what you're doing, which is an amazing skill to have, right? Because if you come in just being curious of, hey, why do you do that? Come on, tell me more about that. Because I think there's a better way. People aren't going to want to partner with you. They're not going to really show you what's happening. But if you come to that conversation with the curiosity to say, I hear you want me to shift these around. Let's talk about what that's going to look like. So we shift those things around. Now what do you do? What's next? Like, oh, I take it, I put this in this PDF format. Ah, got it. Okay, now let's walk through the rest of the process and figure out how do we actually solve the real need of why you've turned into an API yourself. Like you're moving stuff from here to here. You're a chair to keyboard interface, and I don't know why. So let's solve that problem. So like that piece of it involves a lot of like genuine humility. There's a lot of ego checking there of not assuming why they're wanting to solve the problem and just kindness, being that ear to listen so that you can get to the root of what's really going on to solve the underlying core need to get to a better outcome. That sounded like preachy and soapboxy at the end.
It was great. Wow. That sounded like a lot of EU right there. Man, there was not a whole lot of technical. Yeah, the curiosity, you nailed it. And I love being able to ask it in a way that doesn't put someone on the defensive. It's the classic like 5 whys a little bit. They start to just dig down. Can they really give you like the real reason why they want this feature or whatever it is? Aaron, to piggyback just right on the same comment, like, can you talk about how you go about this process of curiosity before you're building, like when you're exploring and talking to other departments and teams? Can you just walk us through how you think about that?
Yeah, we actually go out, we do what we call innovation roadshows, where we go out before we address their problems and we get all their leaders together, their technical folks, the people that have the pain points, and we go through a deck of the art of the possible, right? These are some of the capabilities that we could do. And that usually generates some kind of forethought of their own. Hey, we could really use these things to do some of these other things. And that'll start building up at least some foundational use cases. After we go off stage, then business analysts that are much better at gathering requirements than I am, re-engage and sit down with them and go through exactly what their problems are, tell me where it hurts kind of thing. And they try to understand, because a lot of folks show up with, we want AI to solve this for us. And no, they really just need a SQL query, but they don't know that. And some folks at the end of the day still think that we have AI solving their problem and it's a SQL query, but we just meet their expectations. I think Stephen was saying, kindness. We don't hammer into them, no, this is really how it is. We're like, okay, they think it's a serious SQL query, or they think it's AI, great. Bless their hearts, it's fine.
Okay, so I saw Kyle nodding in full agreement. Kyle, I want you to, when you're working in the whole like AI to solve this piece of it, when you're working with customers, do you help them understand, like, we first need to talk about like the workflow of what we're trying to solve versus, hey, this is, sure, we got this product, whatever, but we need to dive into, is this even the problem that we're trying to solve? Almost like workshopping what the local governments are trying to go through.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. I think what I was saying before it was very similar to what Aaron was saying, right? It's like ultimately nobody cares if it's AI or not solving their problem. The question is, can you solve their problem? And I think like a lot of the buzzwordiness, people get wrapped up in that. And sometimes it is just the SQL query. For us, like what we think about a lot is starting really from the top, like going back to like how we just drive. We drive there, go there, you listen. If you're running the mom test and you're like, hey, do you think my idea is a good idea or not? You're almost already down the wrong path because you want to be listening to their problem and then ultimately coming back with, is my solution solving your problem? Not do you think it's a good idea? And so like I think upstream of all, that's where we start. And then I think part of the fun part as like a tangent of going out and driving all these places is slowing down. Like this good discovery work takes patience, it takes time, it takes deep thought. And especially when you're in more rural parts of America, you stop at one office and then you have an hour and a half in the car with somebody else before the next one. But that's where you get to debrief and like really mull it over and make sure you're coming to the right conclusions. And so I think like when we think about how do you make sure you're solving people's problems, it really starts from that. Is go upstream of all of it, really sit with people, like Steven's suggestions, all about being kind, being mindful, having high EQ, just listening a lot of the time, and really listening throughout the entire organization. Right? Like a lot of times, one of the other tough things you find in the government procurement process is the people who are buying the software are not going to be the ones who are using the software. And unless you've listened throughout the entire sort of organization, the end user isn't going to be satisfied with the thing because the executive might not fully understand their problem. Right? And so you need to go talk to the person who's picking up the phone or doing the casework or whatever it might be and making sure that they have a good experience. Ultimately, like when you look at good product metrics, and this is like jumping ahead, like looking at actual utilization rates and how many people in the organization want to use your tool or are really forced to use your tool, right? Is your tool a piece of work for them or is it working for them? Right? Because some people, when they see a piece of software, they almost feel like they're beholden to that piece of software. I'm doing the work for this product. This program's not doing the work for me. And so I think that's like a lot of what we think about in trying to put it all together and make sure people are getting all the value that they deserve out of it and getting what they actually pay for.
We use the term, if you see somebody trying to carry a bad idea through the door, help them, hold the door, build the trust, right? And then along the way, what are you trying to do here? And you can start guiding them as they're trying to move that couch.
That's probably you holding the door open for me when I'm visiting the office. This guy's figured a bad idea.
Dude, but your point about adoption totally makes sense for the government side, right? Because it's not like the people that work for the government organization are going to be able to say, yeah, I'm not going to use that tool I need to use to do my job. But if you're over celebrating 100% adoption, we got them all. Yeah, they also need to get paid. So they got to use your system.
And when we interview folks on the ground, that's what you hear a lot of, right? Like the way they describe these software systems is it's almost like the software system is the work as opposed to the software system is helping me do my work. Yeah. That's a very important distinction.
I could go down that rabbit hole, but I'm not going to right now. Okay, moving on to future vision. Always love this. Constantly thinking, especially right now. It's so great. There was actually, I don't know if you all saw this, but this guy, Jason Lemkin, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, runs probably the largest SaaS conference, SaaStr, started an Echo Sign that he sold to Adobe. And he was on Twitter, and same thing with, he had talked about Repletter, as the cool kids call it, Reply, just deleted his whole database, and like, it was just so great. It was just so funny. But him, and then there's a podcaster, Harry Stebbings, 20VC, and they did a podcast, a deep dive, like, hey, did you just kill this company? But the lessons learned on like the product side and the security side of things that you just had not thought about as what happens to your data if this thing just goes crazy, right? Wrapping all of that in the future, Aaron, I'm just curious around QBranch's perspective on just emerging tech, how you think about securing that. Where do you think the future of government service delivery is going to be? Maybe even the CIOs themselves have not considered it yet.
I think you said it in there in securing technology. Decentralized identity frameworks. Right now, I think that's going to be the next thing that you don't really hear about. You're still seeing folks say, what's our identity management solution, right? But think about a verifiable citizen-owned digital identity, secured blockchain or some other decentralized trust registry. It gives the citizen the ownership of their ID, right? Their personalization, reduce fraud, makes frictionless experiences. Imagine a resident applying for SNAP or housing or unemployment or whatever with just a single digital transaction, right?
Actually, I've not thought about that. Not really, but it is an interesting concept on the decentralized identity. I don't know if the government would allow us to get there at that point.
Yeah, I think it's a little complex, right? If I can
Yeah.
create an identity that I myself can specify, it's just or a series of numbers, it's gibberish. It's hard for government humans to understand that this serial number is this person. They still want that. I know who you are and I can say who you are, but no, it's kind of like the valet key. I can show up and say, this is me and this is my car, and you can verify that it's me, but at the end of the day, I own it. That's a hard thing to change that direction on.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Stephen, you mentioned that just in our conversations around AI and all the policy and procurement and kind of everything. What innovation would you like to see coming down the pipeline?
Man, it's a loaded question, so I got to think about which answer I can give while recorded on a podcast.
The future one,
Yeah, the future one, man. So for me, what I think the idea of centralized identity is fascinating to me, enabling some other system integrations. Because to me, the data that we have about people are very confidential information, right? And I would love to be able to help the people that we're serving by connecting them to other systems resources. But there's a conundrum here, right? So I don't want to share that people are involved with our system. That's not a very nice thing to be sharing out there in the world. So I think it's fascinating to think about this like centralized identity piece, but then also how do we do it that doesn't necessarily leave a trace that someone was involved with a child protection system and still connects them with services that they need in a way that matches their actual needs, not like some generalized need of tangible resources, but literally like Stephen needs these things. We know Aaron has these services. We're going to connect them without it being Aaron now knows Stephen needs these things. Now, that's like future, right? Like way down the road that your Amazon account can do amazing things for you. Why not the government doing those amazing things for you as well? But the other is probably more of a mindset shift for government folks. And I don't know, Aaron, if you've dealt with this in the past. It sounds like you've done some pretty successful change at getting people to think through the innovation. But I know on our side, sometimes we have people thinking we can't have those nice things because we work for government and we're supposed to be the folks that are falling on the sword. Which I get. I totally get. It's a very noble thing. Like we're working for the citizens out there. It's taxpayer dollars. We have to be very responsible for this. But I want to shift the thinking a little bit to say that it's the taxpayers' dollars. You should have good things. If you don't have good things, why are you spending the taxpayers' dollars? We need to deliver the best of the best. And yeah, no offense, Kyle, like private sector, great. Deliver me some amazing things, but I want the government to do better than that. Like, I want that service not to say press 1 or 2. I want them to call me to say, hey, the tree fell down. We're going to have somebody come to your house and they're going to clean it up for you. We got the people already lined up. It's going to be amazing. That's the sort of thing that I think would be the future that I want to be in. The government is expected to be amazing, not expected to be a piece of paper, walking into a facility, standing in line, handing it off to someone, and then getting moved to the next queue. It's not technology necessarily, but it fits in. Like it's a perception shift.
So Kyle, you've seen organizations like Pacifica go from, we a little bit talked about this broadly, but go from limited office hours to operating 24/7 AI powered responses. I think you had mentioned that they got a staff of 130 serving 40,000 residents. So just paint us the picture of what local government looks like in 5 years as the technology starts to evolve and it becomes the norm.
Yeah, I think like the big part of it, one, of course, I think the adoption of technology. Yeah, I think there's like a whole tangent I can go down on like why it hasn't happened to date and why I think now is the right moment. And I think the short of all of that is basically government does, especially at the local level, so many disparate things that nobody's really been able to build at the intersection of flexible, configurable, easy to use software. It just does not exist. And I think the AI pieces allow you to do those three things, right? So I think for the first time ever, you'll actually see useful software for local government coming online. And what that actually means on the ground, I think there's really two big buckets that those things fall into. And one rolls up to how do we improve staffer retention and job satisfaction? Because that's certainly a problem. We see a lot of, there's like a bimodal group of staff right now, at least from our interactions, what we see is there's a lot of, say, folks who are close to retirement age and then folks who are earlier in their careers but tend to churn really fast, right? And so if the folks who are aging out of the workforce leave and there really isn't good public servants there to fill their place who want to be there for a long time, that's a problem, right? And so one bucket is how do we make the job better for the staff so we get better retention ideally even better talent and keep getting good talent, better talent in there. And then the second part is by improving all of this, when people have personally good experiences with government, I think a lot of it goes back to building back the public institutional trust, right? There's definitely been some erosion of that over the last 20-ish years, right? And so I think like a lot of it goes into those two buckets. And then if we think about what the AI does, I think it can enable a lot of that stuff, right? It's like, how do you take all of the chores and jobs, like the dishes and laundry equivalent work that the government staff does, take that off their plate? There is nobody answering the phone 40 hours a week to answer the same 20 questions over and over again. That job stinks. Nobody wants to do that, right? AI can handle that and handle that really well. And then on the resident side, it's like, how do you make it like that Amazon experience, right? Like Amazon's like totally normalized the fact that you can ship any product you can possibly imagine in 36 hours to any home in America. That's actually a crazy feat. And to be able to do it with shipping tracking the whole way too, right? So you're like, oh, my package will be here at 2:30 tomorrow. And I think when someone files for their pet license, right? People love their pets and they file that application and it's not really transparent when that's going to come back. It might even come back like 5 days later and say, hey, you did this wrong. And now you get kicked into some longer term review cycle and it takes another week and a half to get that back. It's like, how do you make that transparent and efficient, right? So that when folks interact with the government, they feel like this is something that works. This is something that works for me. And then I think that really enables what Stephen and I are talking about, which is belief in the institution, I think helps create the sort of a trust that you can trust those folks to invest in the right thing. So it's like good begets more good, right? And so I think you can fall into these positive feedback loops where I think across America, as trust erodes, then people become more skeptical of what government's capable of, and then they want to defund things, and now you have less resources to actually go do something. Where ideally it works the opposite now, right? Where as trust returns, you say, okay, here's more money and here's more budget to do experimental things. And I think one of the cool things about American government, which is different from a lot of the world, is it is decentralized, right? Maricopa County can try something, and if they make that bet, literally every other county in America can benefit from it, right? Because they can see the example that's been set. And I think, to me, that's what gives me the most hope, right? And I think us at Polimorphic is how can we enable folks who want to do innovative things to try that out, set that precedent, and then take those things countrywide.
I love that. So as we're closing this out, as if you were to look at local government today, what's one takeaway?
So the wild never really matches your test or your training scenarios. You're like, oh, this works great in my little lab space. It works. It's amazing. Let's push it out the door. And then the more people that touch it will say things to your AI, will put things in there it's never seen. Your confidence scores, your false positives, it'll all go out the window. So really it's about having that early life support, right? That be ready for early failures, be ready to triage and iterate and improve. And that's part of the grace that we get through Rich. Is when we first release it, yeah, it was great. Now it's on the rocks and we need to make these changes quickly. You may have to completely change the stack within a month of production release, right? So it's really about composable architectures. Pick technologies that integrate well with others or that will plug into others. If I need to take all the Legos off the top and replace one in the middle and put all the Legos back on top, you need to have that ability really to see success. Legos.
Love that. Stephen?
I'm going to piggyback off of that a little bit, except on the more human executive business side, right? Because psychological safety is very important to me and our organization on how we handle those failures, because you're going to fail, right? But the key is, are you learning from them and are you handling them with grace, right? Knowing that the people that built the thing that failed didn't intend to build something that failed. Like they didn't intend for the outcome to go wrong. So being mindful of the risks you pick, they are risks. They may not work out, but pick ones that matter to you as an organization. And if they don't work out, then be ready to learn something from it so you don't make the mistake again, and then you build on it and you move forward. Because it's the most human thing to always want to go backwards to something. And there ain't no going back. Like this thing is unboxed. So now it's how do we learn from the failures and keep going forward with reasonable, responsible risks.
Human part, because we get hate mail right away when something's bad.
Oh, dude.
This sucks.
Immediately. 1 star.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. And it's by default, some of the agencies you're always going to get 1 star, no matter how great. It shouldn't be that way, but it's just a tough spot for a lot of the agencies. Kyle, I'd love to hear from you. What does it look like? What advice would you give to these teams that are looking at a lot of different projects, pilots? Where would you advise them to start? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think what Aaron said about composable architecture, like that stands out to me a lot. That's almost like a framework that you almost need to begin to do all this experimentation, right? That's table stakes to really get in the game and be able to try a bunch of different things. And I think from there, like a lot of what we've seen on the ground is be very purposeful about what outcomes you're measuring for. I think a lot of folks end up trapped in the box of the systems they've built in the past, right? So you might end up with a lot of backwards processes or even systems because that's the way that it had to be then when it was built, right? Maybe there was some reporting criteria that you had to report this to the state and this had to go somewhere else and they had their own bespoke system and this and that. And I think that's where, again, going to the AI pieces, it can totally change what's possible. And so you don't want to recreate the fallacies or the shortcomings of the system as it existed in the past. And so it's really important to be mindful of what outcomes you're measuring for and really trying to achieve those, right? Because you might actually have to rethink the overall architecture of that process or workflow from the ground up. And as Aaron's suggesting, if you can do that in a modular, composable way, that's even better, right? Because then you can experiment with parts A, B, C, and D in that process independently. And you can come to the best conclusions really fast about each step of the process as opposed to having to experiment one at a time. And so I think that's really helpful. And then I think the other thing is one of the most fun things to me about serving government is that fundamentally our customers are not competitors. It's so cool to see the amount of collaboration that our customers have with each other, right? And having come from more B2B SaaS world where some folks are like, I don't want anyone else to have the software because that's part of our competitive edge. Like government's just totally opposite. And so I think sharing the success stories and getting it out there about what is working and like even communicating forums like this, like just talking about what's working, I think is incredibly valuable because again, it is all decentralized, which allows everybody to experiment. And when we can experiment independently and then share back together, like the network effects are just incredible.
Okay, so I want to just, and my friend, I know we're a little bit over, my friend Ryan Murray, who's CISO for the state of Arizona, yeah, we love Ryan, been on the show several times, to double click on that. I was curious, Kyle, what are some of the most popular outcomes that you've seen from customers nationwide that they're measuring?
Yeah, the headline one is how much time does staff get back? That is easily the headline one, especially when it comes to what we would call like our AI front desk products, like how do you engage or interact with your government? Just so much of it goes back to same 50 questions come in and organization is spending the equivalent, I'll make up numbers, but it's like on the order of hundreds of person hours a week just answering the phone. So what could your organization do if you freed up those resources to do literally whatever they wanted? And usually folks have really good ideas about what's possible, what you can introduce, new policies, new programs. And it's just like you're so bottlenecked on the staff side, both from the staff you have and even trying to recruit new staff, that it's not even, oh, if you just spent more money, you could get more staff to do more. It's literally like, this is what we got and we're mandated to do these services. And so we have to do this. And the second you can get AI to take all of that off your plate and say, okay, now you have a 80% reduction in call volume. And because the AI is on at nights and weekends, when you come in on Monday morning, there aren't 500 voicemails sitting in the inbox that somebody has to go listen to and answer. What can you do with all that time? And that's where it gets open-ended, and every organization has different priorities and needs. But knowing that you have the capability of giving an organization like 5, 10 headcount back, basically, by flipping a switch, that's really powerful. And I think that's really cool. And that speaks to the most value that we can drive for folks.
I love it. We are wrapping up this podcast. I wanted to thank you all for coming on Tech Tables. And I love what you said about college, the network effects. I think this is just underrated, both in the media space, which I'm in, and just in general. And with that, Kyle is coming back on the show next week. Wow, lucky me, I get Kyle again for another podcast we're going to do with Ricardo Castillo, Frank Quintana, and Raimundo Rodolfo, all my friends in Miami, South Miami, just coming together right now. Very excited. And so excited to grab this transcript and see how I can ask Kyle even better questions for the next interview. How fun is that? And I'll piggyback off of Aaron and Steven's insights too. I want to thank you so much for coming on Tech Tables.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.